Hey everyone. In this bite-sized algebra video we're going to be looking at a mixture of substituting, solving and simplifying. If you haven't tried these before, I would suggest having a look at my previous videos that are looking at each of these individually, as you might get a little bit lost in terms of method if you haven't looked at those yet. The only reason being that I'm going to be jumping around from kind of method to method, and unless you've got a decent understanding from the earlier videos, you might lose track of which bit we're doing and why. So my advice is to start there, have a check on the basic rules for each one of those things, and then come back to this video at the end just for a little bit of practice or just to check through the work for you. So bearing that in mind, we're going to start with this question here, which is, I realise it's 9a on here, but I'm just putting my little subheadings in as we go through the videos. And we're looking at the perimeter of a rectangle. So the perimeter is the outside of a rectangle. So it's the measurement of the outside. And the perimeter is given by the formula P equals 2, open brackets, L plus B, close brackets. Now all this is saying is the perimeter around the outside is 2 lots of the length and 2 lots of the breadth or width, depending on your preference. So that's all it's saying is L and B are the lengths of the rectangle on each side, and P just adding them up. So what we're looking for is find P when L equals 17 and B equals 13. So my first step for this is going to be, I do it line by line, so I'm just going to say, right, so we've got P equals 2, we've got to open our brackets up, L is 17 in this question, it's given us it there, and then we're going to add B, and it's given us 13 for B here, like this. I'm then going to move on to my next line, so I'm just going to say P equals, and I've got my 2 still sat there, but remember in BidMass I'm just going to fill in the bracket section first, so I'm just going to complete this bracket first. So 17 plus 13 equals 30. So we're going to do P equals 2 times, because remember, if there's nothing in between, if there's no gap there, there's a multiplication in there when we're talking about algebra. So we're going to do 2 times whatever we found in the bracket. In this case it was 30. And then our final line is P equals 60. So the perimeter around this rectangle equals 60. Now that could be centimetres, metres, we don't know. It doesn't actually give us a unit to measure it in. So just putting 60 there is absolutely fine. That would be a 2-mark question. Nice and straightforward. Easy win under your belt. Moving on. Next we've got a solve question. So it's asking to solve the equation. And we've got 4x minus 5 equals x plus 1. So what we're looking at when we're solving this equation is we're going to try and get x on its own if we can. So in order to get x on its own, we're going to have to try and isolate some of these numbers out. So personally I like to do it as step by step. So what I would look at first of all is I would say, okay, so I want to try and get this 4x on its own, and I want to try and get rid of the x on this side. And the reason I want to do that is I want to have a certain number of x's on this side and just a number on its own on this side that I can then have a little look at after. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to add 5 to each side of this equation here. So if I add 5 to the left hand side, I'll just have 4x sat there, because this minus 5 will go away. And if I add 5 to the other side, I'm then going to have x plus 1 plus 5. So I can just write that as plus 6. So I just have an x plus 6, like that. Next thing I want to do is try and get rid of this x on this side of the equation here. So to get rid of that x, I can minus x. So what I can do is I can say 4x minus x on this side of the equation, and that will leave me with 6 on the other side of the equation. because I've taken this 6 away from this x away from this side, and I've taken an x away on the other side of the equal sign, and I've left the 6 on its own. So our final step would be just to do 4x minus x, which gives us 3x equals 6. And from there, we can just find what 1x is. So 1x in this example equals 2. Why does it equal 2? Because to get from 3x to x, I've just divided by 3. And whatever I do on this side, I have to do on the other side as well. So 6 divided by 3 gives us our 2. Now, if you wanted to, you can check at the end by dropping that number into the original equation here. So we could put that 2 in here if we want to and see what comes out. So 4 lots of 2 is 8. 8 minus 5 equals 3. And then we'll check the other side, put the 2 in there. 2 plus 1 equals 3 as well. So 3 equals 3. Yeah, that balances. We know we've come out with the right answer. So whenever you're solving an equation for x or y or whatever else you happen to be solving it for, once you've got your value here, so once you've got your x equals, you can then drop that number back into the original formula just to check that it works. And if you've done everything else right, if all your other steps are right, that should work just fine. So moving on, we're now having to find the value of 3x plus 4y when x equals 2 and y equals 5. So what we're going to do here is, similar thing again, we're just going to go line by line with this. So just to remember, one of our basic rules is if there is no gap between the letter and the number here, it is 3 lots of or 3 times x. And this is 4 lots of y or 4 times y, depending on your preference. So we're just going to write it out in full first of all. So we're going to say that it's 3 times 2. So I'm going to say 3 times 2 plus 4 times 5. So we've got 3 times 2 because x is 2. So just putting that 2 in there. And it's plus 4 times 5 because y is 5. Just putting that 5 there. Next line, we'll just do those multiplications. So 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 5 is 20. And it's just a simple addition. So 6 plus 20, 26. That's all we're looking at. Same formula again. Same expressions again. So we're just going to say when x equals 6 and y equals minus 3. So we're going to drop those in. So when x is 6, it's 3 times 6 up here. So we're going to write 3 times 6. And then we're adding on 4 times y. And y is minus 3. So we're going to do 4 times minus 3. So on our next line, we're just going to simplify that down a little bit. So 3 times 6, we're going to do that first. That gives us 18. Then we're adding on 4 times minus 3. So don't forget that minus in there. So 4 lots of minus 3 would give us a minus 12. So what we end up with there is 18 plus a negative 12, which, as I've mentioned in an earlier video, when we're mixing positives and negatives like this, the negative wins out. So this becomes 18 minus 12. And we end up with 6. Final one for this particular section, then I'll probably break it off into an extra video for the next bit for these simplified questions that are coming up. So let's have a little look at finding the value of a cubed plus b squared when a equals 2 and b equals 5. So again, typically I think this is just a font matter, so that 3 would usually be a bit smaller and up in the top corner here. But it's definitely saying a cubed plus b squared. I think it's just a formatting issue for this particular question. So if you saw something come up like this on an algebra topic test and it was written like that, I'd ask just to clarify exactly what that's after. because having the letters and numbers that way around doesn't make sense from an algebra perspective unless it is an indices. So what does a cubed actually mean? That's the bit that we need to think about. So a cubed means that a has been multiplied by itself. So if it's cubed, it means that we need 3 of them. So a cubed is the equivalent of, not putting uppercase A, of putting a times a times a, like that. And by the same logic, b squared is doing it twice. So we're just doing b times b. Now, some of you may find it more useful to put brackets around these parts, each individual bit, and that's perfectly fine. You can do that if it kind of helps you view it better. I know it does with me. So we can write it like that. And then what we're doing after that is we're just going to substitute those numbers in. So essentially what we've got is we can open our brackets and say 2 times 2 times 2. And I've got that from this a equals 2 here. Plus b times b. B is 5. So I've got 5 times 5 in there, like that. Then all I'm going to do is on the next line, we're just going to do these brackets first. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And then we add 5 times 5, which is 25. And that will give us an answer of 33. This section here, so remembering what a cubed or b squared means, so remembering that it's the times by, the times by, the times by, along these way, that's an important bit for you. So just being able to remember how to convert both ways between that. So if you ever see a times a written like that, it means it's a cubed. Or if you see b times b, for example, that's b squared. So if we ever multiply letters together in algebra, we always end up with that letter to the power of however many we've used. So 2 b's in this case, or 3 a's in this case. So I'll leave it there for now, and I will see you on the next video where I am going to run through a little bit more on the simplification side. Bye for now.